Good morning, friends and colleagues from around the world. Please, if you could bear with us just for a few minutes, we are waiting for all of the registered participants to join us. We'll be with you in just a moment.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ben. I'm the technical support for this meeting. So please feel free to send me a message in the chat if I can support with anything. Just let me know. Thank you. So just to confirm, if you wish to speak in the meeting, it does help to have a headset like this. So we get a nice direct sound for our interpreters so they can relay your message reliably. If you don't have one of these will do. Maybe we may ask you just to lift the microphone towards your mouth when you speak. So we get, once again, we get a nice direct sound. If you don't have one of these available, speaking close to the laptop may do, and obviously that would be what we ask you to do if you don't have either of these type of headsets available. Just moving on, you can check you have the correct microphone and headset or speaker selected, ideally a headset as mentioned via the up arrow to the left of your microphone. You can choose your settings there. And of course you can choose your camera settings here also via the up arrow to the right of the camera. In the participants section, you can see everyone that's in the meeting. And in the chat, you can choose to send a message to everybody or to an individual. So of course, please feel free to send me a message if I can support with any technical support or make an announcement to the whole meeting via the everyone option there. If you wish to take part in the meeting, please feel free to raise a hand. We don't actually have the reaction section in this meeting. It's actually just raise hand. But by raising a hand, you'll then be in a queue to make an intervention in the meeting. So please feel free to use this. And finally, today we have English and Arabic available as interpretation. Unfortunately, on my demonstration, it shows French and Spanish, but it will be English and Arabic via the interpretation button at the bottom here. And you can choose your preferred language via the interpretation section here. So that's the key controls for the Zoom platform with interpretation. Please feel free to send me a message if I can support. I wish you a good meeting and I'll pass you back to Sophia now. Many thanks, and I'll stop sharing now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Excuse me. Many thanks. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Ms. Amy Muadin, the Deputy Head of the UN Network on Migration Secretariat, to give opening remarks. Over to you, Amy.
Great. Thank you so much, Sophia. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And thank you for joining us this morning for this webinar on promoting fair and ethical recruitment in a digital world. It's our pleasure as the network to provide this platform for the launch of this joint ILO-IOM publication. As Ben mentioned, there is translation into Arabic available for this session, as you'll see on the language icon on the right hand of the screen. We do have a really interesting panel today, a number of great speakers. There will be a question and answer session towards the end of the panel, but please also feel free to use the chat function here to share information or resources, or even to begin asking some of the questions. Just very quickly, by way of introduction, the UN Network on Migration was created by the UN Secretary General in 2018 in response to member states' adoption and endorsement of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. And in that, the network was established to provide timely, effective, and coordinated support of the UN system to member states on their implementation of the GCM. Actually, one of the key elements of the Global Compact itself is that it has in there a follow-up, review, and implementation framework to ensure that migration remains at the top of the UN's agenda for the foreseeable future. Now, one of the key achievements of the network itself is its growth and its presence at the country level. And there are so far over 54 country networks, also 6 regional networks, and they work together to roll out a number of network products in terms of capacity building support, excuse me, to support governments in their implementation of the Global Compact, as well as providing thematic guidance on a number of areas such as alternatives to detention, access to services, return and reintegration, on pathways for migrants in vulnerable situations, and on bilateral labor migration agreements. The network also provides platforms for member states and all stakeholders for discussions on GCM implementation, as I believe was also shared with all participants earlier this morning by email. And these are particularly important bits of guidance and platforms that we all need to collectively use, because the Global Compact will have its very first global review in May 2022 at UN headquarters in New York. So in this regard, I'm very happy that the network is supporting this launch today and commend IOM and ILO for their publication on promoting fair and ethical recruitment in a digital world. I think that given the 164 million labor migrants around the world as estimated by ILO, this is a key input and support to member states in GCM implementation. And really, when we discuss labor migration, fair and ethical recruitment, this is a prerequisite for the international cooperation that is needed and is aspired to in the Global Compact itself. Now, about today's panel, we're very excited to have speakers from 4 countries from around the world speaking about leading government-facilitated digital platforms in promoting fair and ethical recruitment. We are very pleased to welcome Professor Fall, who served as a technical expert on the negotiations for the 2030 Agenda and the Global Compact itself. And he was also a thematic lead for the Global Forum on Migration and Development in 2021 on the theme of leveraging new technologies to empower migrants, and for the Abu Dhabi Dialogue Research Agenda on leveraging advanced technology to improve labor mobility governance. Now, I'm very pleased to now pass on the floor to our colleagues, Ms. Michelle Layton, the Chief of the Labor Migration Branch at ILO, and Ms. Marina Manke, the Head of Labor Mobility and Human Development Division of the Department of Migration Management at IOM, to frame today's discussion and to introduce the joint ILO-IRM report on promoting fair and ethical recruitment in a digital world. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Amy. And I'm Michelle Layton, as Amy mentioned, leading the global program on labor migration for ILO. And thanks for that introduction, Amy, to the UN network. It's really a pleasure to be here and join you from Geneva this morning, but good afternoon to our distinguished panelists and participants wherever you are in the world. It's certainly an important issue for the ILO, and ensuring that migrant workers are recruited fairly is central to the realization of decent work and achieving the SDG targets, particularly 8.8 and 10.7. Fair recruitment is also key to the objectives of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration, as Amy just mentioned. There is far too many instances of unfair recruitment practices, and that includes fee charging, contract substitution, debt bondage, and other issues, which remain stubbornly entrenched in processes of labor migration in spite of efforts at regulatory reform and enforcement. One of the reasons is that recruitment of migrant workers across borders necessarily entails cooperation and oversight in countries of origin and destination. But we know that that oversight and cooperation is still far too weak. One country may have recruitment laws prohibiting fee charging for migrants, for example, but if the other country in the migration corridor does not, migrant workers are not protected from abuse, including human trafficking. So labor brokers can violate international standards and subvert government regulations, even those made with the best of intentions. Basically, fair recruitment requires, it's central to have joint cooperation. And the growing role of technology in facilitating recruitment can be a real means for joint cooperation. This oversight and the use of digital technology is even more critical as we emerge from the pandemic. And if done right, we think it can ensure greater protection of migrant workers' rights. And there are certainly opportunities for this. In many parts of the world, digital technology is already being used at the national recruiting processes. From Brussels to Beijing, governments are introducing e-systems such as online public employment services, virtual coaching sessions, and digital job fairs. The study that has been published by ILO and IOM focuses on government-facilitated digital platforms for international recruitment. And it really brings a new dimension to the possibilities for oversight and ensuring fair recruitment. The study analyzes 4 digital technology platforms, namely in the Republic of Korea, the employment permit system, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Musned, the Republic of India, e-migrate system, and Europe's EURES. And I know that a number of speakers are here today that are going to give you an insight into their specific platforms. The ILO and IOM report offers preliminary guidance to states developing online applications and platforms. And it shares approaches on how to best leverage new techniques and technologies, including artificial intelligence and blockchain technology. Now, some of the key findings that emerged from the study indicate that state-led digital technology initiatives have displayed some promising results, such as in promoting institutional transparency and oversight, and by transforming the recruitment procedures into what we know are paperless, digitized processes. States have sought to establish greater transparency by making all recruitment and migration procedures, their costs, complaints mechanisms, and so on, much more accessible to migrant workers. These online systems can also help reduce the cost of migration, and in some cases, reduce the potential collusion between private recruitment agencies in countries of origin and placement agencies in destination, which can also be a source of fraud and exploitation of migrants. State-facilitated digital technology has also supported expanded regulatory oversight. This has empowered some states, for example, to more easily identify violations, impose sanctions against agencies or employers that abuse the law, including through license suspension or revocation. Technology has also enabled collection of useful labor market data, such as patterns in employers' compliance levels. But let me say that digitalization of labor recruitment is not a solution to address all the challenges faced in the recruitment process. It can only be of service when it's grounded in strong political and institutional commitments to improve regulatory oversight and cooperation across borders, but also to commitments of human rights and labor standards implementation. A further caution is that state-facilitated digital platforms may not be accessible by all workers, such as those with limited digital literacy or linguistic skills. And platforms can inadvertently result in a more time-consuming process, along with extensive documentation, administration. The risks of increasing informal industry actors, such as informal recruiters or centers offering typing or migration support, is also quite real. And without proper oversight, this can actually increase rather than decrease the risks of exploitation. So the report recommends that emerging use of technology has to be accompanied by robust due diligence procedures. which can safeguard workers against discrimination and other human rights violations. On the 15th of September this year, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights urged a moratorium on the sale and use of artificial intelligence systems that pose a risk to human rights until there are adequate safeguards put in place. It's also important to note that the data used to inform and guide AI systems for recruitment could be faulty or biased. For example, privileging one nationality, a gender, or a group, and could lead to discriminatory decisions by the AI. And there's a further risk in the long-term storage of sensitive data on workers, which, if improperly stored, can be exploited to the detriment of workers. So it's very important that governments seeking to build and use these platforms create the appropriate legislative and regulatory framework. And ILO has general principles and operational guidelines based on our standards, which can help. Now, these need to ensure that recruitment practices, whether nationally or across borders, are grounded in the labor standards, international labor standards, and developed through social dialogue and ensure gender equality. This is one reason that the ILO is redoubling its efforts to provide support to our constituents to build fair recruitment frameworks. Now, earlier this year, the ILO launched our second phase of a 5-year fair recruitment initiative. This is building on the lessons that we've learned over the past years in some 30 countries where the initiative is now operating. We're scaling up this work to reach many more countries and to expand the engagement of the initiative that would help businesses, employers, workers' organizations, and governments in partnership. It's also facilitating platforms for all stakeholders to exchange lessons, concrete practices, and to really improve global knowledge. And that's why we've launched a new global knowledge hub. The promise of digital technology is gaining considerable interest by governments around the world and by all of you that we can see are joining in today. In September, the ILO and IOM co-hosted a forum on digitalization, migration, and development in Latin America. It was very popular. And last month, the ministerial consultation in the Abu Dhabi dialogue focused on how digital tools can promote more successful job matching and fair recruitment in Asia and Gulf countries. Now, let me conclude by saying that as momentum and the appetite for technology and recruitment grows, the ILO and IOM's report really provides, we think, a timely opportunity to learn from the experiences of the countries featured. And we hope this ignites interest to utilize the right. I'm hearing a lot of feedback, but anyway, the rights-based tools and approaches that are available. I'll stop here and I'll turn the floor over to Marina Menke of IOM. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Dear colleagues, dear participants, it's a pleasure to join this very interesting and unique event. We have all been working so hard. I remember the moment when the colleagues from ILO approached us with an invitation to partner on these joint initiatives to finally start looking into the topic of digitalization and labor mobility, labor migration and recruitment, and to what extent the ongoing processes are really creating benefits for our beneficiaries and our partners from the governments. Because indeed, digitalization and disruptions created by modern technologies is something which is emerging and really is evident, as we have all witnessed during the last almost 2 years with the situation of the global pandemic. The globalization and integration of markets creates a lot of opportunities for accessing employment, livelihood opportunities in other countries, but at the same time, they create a lot of risks. So indeed, looking today at today's gathering with the distinguished speakers and partners, let us look into the challenges and opportunities created by the digital processes and disruptions emerged to understand in terms of implications for good migration governance, for our work on the ground with partners, with countries along various corridors. For our organization, the topic of data and digital technologies is not novel. Actually, I started working in our organization in 2004, trying to support cooperation among governments in terms of offering effective and efficient solutions and governing frameworks for migrants and mobile populations. And since then, the topic of digitalization has been really on my mind as applied to various stages of migration continuum. You know, our organization is really working on all aspects of good migration governance, and we are advocating for important support and enabling solutions for migrants at all stages, before departure, during the process of recruitment, in migration, upon return, and re-migration. And indeed, human mobility is evolving tremendously, because as we notice, it is no longer needed for us to cross borders. Very often, migration and of jobs happens even with people sitting in their homes, but the already access to employment opportunities are becoming complex because the job and service is provided in another jurisdiction. So indeed, technologies create a lot of disruptions, but at the same time, a lot of opportunities for efficiency in the markets. I think our report shows that a number of initiatives we have looked in together are helping us to match the actual offer from a job seeker with the actual offer from the job. And that is wonderful. That is a good opportunity for migrant and the employer to come together closer and to ensure that the skills that the beneficiary, the migrant is in possession, really are fitting the best to the job. But at the same time, this is creating challenges and potential gaps. And I'm sure today we will tap and look into some of those specific gaps and challenges related to digital divide. What we see in our programming, very often opportunities are emerging, but very much tilted towards those who really possess the digital skills. And digital divide is absolutely crucial area for us to look into together, because those who have access to digital technologies and job platforms might not necessarily need additional support from organizations like ours or our partner ILO or other UN organizations. They are already empowered themselves, and they can find their career path and really progress and support both their families, but also communities. So let's keep an eye on that potential risk emerging, which is absolutely omnipresent, not only in the area of migration governance, but in the whole work of our organization, the United Nations. So let me refer to the roadmap which UN Secretary General issued a few months ago. We really position our work in the area of migration and specifically recruitment stage under the overall umbrella of that roadmap, which does speak about the importance of adhering to human rights, the importance of really looking into the digital capacity building, because that's another challenge. It's not only about migrant, but also some countries who might not necessarily have benefits of accessing modern technologies in terms of introducing good migration governance solutions. I remember when I worked on data sharing in 2004, some of our partner countries kept on talking us, why are you bringing Mercedes here and show us experiences of most advanced countries? Please show us how to start the progress step by step moving forward. So as we move into the consideration of the four panelists' contributions, which I'm sure going to be very excited and interesting, let me just conclude with 5 key recommendations which we came up with, and I hope you take these recommendations as a food for thought during today's event, but also continuing your excellent work in the organizations supporting development, but also countries and civil society. So the first recommendation which we have come up with together with the experts and the partners is about the importance of investing in understanding technologies, but also really developing them further. So very often we see the solutions being emerging, which are really tackling an immediate need, but then they are abandoned because, again, there is no commitment towards investing in the development of the technological solutions, because it is not a one-off investment, but really it is a maintenance issue. It's important to continue investing. Technology is evolving. You need to continue keeping them up to speed. Then they bring relevance. Of course, there's no one fit for all. We need to adopt those technologies, and the models which we are going to present today, they are there for inspiration only. So as we take them to other contexts, it's important to keep in mind that each context differs, so we need to adjust. The second recommendation, which we would like to propose, is the importance of keeping in mind the need to take technology only as one part of the solution. It's not the solution of itself. It's only one. The hardware, the software, yes, they are powerful, but it's the human dimension. It's the actual relationship. It's the legal frameworks, which are also similarly important. So we need to keep the technological advances in the context of broader complementary efforts. And I think this has already been mentioned. The third recommendation, I started from it. So technologies are helping us to really bring as close to each other as possible the worker and the employer together. They create this immediate almost contact possibility of coming together. But as I mentioned, while this creates opportunities, there is really a need for ensuring due diligence and oversight, and this is where collaboration with partners from civil society, but also the private sector, is crucial, because they themselves understand the importance of creating necessary mechanisms which will ensure that the relationship between employee and worker remain on equal grounding and in line with all the rights and safeguarding those. The fourth recommendation is about accessibility. Indeed, technologies create transparency, efficiency, oversight, but absolutely it is crucial that these technologies are not creating some sort of a bottleneck. So the broader work of governments on creating e-governance solutions across the world are overwhelming. So we know that a lot of services are being offered to citizens of the countries. But again, this is absolutely crucial that we are not leaving some parts of the society behind where all these new trends are emerging. So again, I spoke about the digital device. So this recommendation is about that, accessibility. And the final recommendation would be about scalability. I also referred to that in my first recommendation on investments. How do we ensure that moving forward, the solution which we create is really not only supporting one part of the market, but really offers a holistic approach and support? The EURES is an amazing portal. We have been monitoring the evolution of it for over the years, and we know that it has a lot of potential. But again, how do we ensure that it becomes a part and parcel of the recruitment process? But again, this is where the buy-in from all parts of the labor, all participants of the labor market, migrants, employers, and the recruitment mediators. So this becomes absolutely crucial to achieve scalability. So dear colleagues and partners, I don't want to take more time from the exciting presentations of the specific platforms which are coming up, as well as other exchanges. So I'm looking forward to staying in touch, and many thanks to both our partner ILO, but also the network on migration, the Secretariat, which agreed to host this event. And thanking, of course, the teams from our regional offices who worked so hard to get to this day today. So welcome, and then enjoy the exchanges.
Thank you very much, Marina. My name is Jibril Fal, and I've got the privilege of moderating the next session. Nice to see you, Marina, and thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Amy. As we get into the discussion of this very important report, I want to take the opportunity to thank ILO and IOM for producing this report on promoting fair and ethical recruitment in a digital world. I myself had the privilege to do some work on leveraging technology to empower migrants, and recruitment, of course, was obviously an important part of that element. In this report, we have 4 substantive case studies, and of course, the privilege of having the authors and the people who are responsible for running these platforms to be with us to discuss their platforms in relation to the report produced by ILO and IOM. We have 4 of our colleagues here today. First, Mr. Hye-Young Chung, who is the Director of the Foreign Workforce Division of the Ministry of Employment and Labor in the Republic of Korea. We also have Mr. Fauzan Al-Muhaidib, who is the Executive Vice President of Takamal Holding in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have from India, Mr. Sri Jayan Kumar Sao, who is the Director and Protector of Immigrants in the Republic of India. And we have Mr. Lambert Kleinman, Deputy Head of Unit at the Labor Mobility and Public Employment Services of the European Commission. In the coming minutes, we will hear from these 4 colleagues. He would speak about their recruitment platforms in detail. And we would have about 40 minutes or so, up to 20 past the hour, where we will hear their presentation and a bit of reaction to questions I may put to them. After that, we would have another 30 minutes, up to 10 minutes to the hour, where members of the audience, the delegates, would have the opportunity to ask questions and put up their comments. I would remind you that you can start putting your questions or observations in the chat box. And when it comes to the question and answer session, you can use the raise hand. Our colleague from ILO, Sophie, is kindly helping monitoring. And thanks, Sophie, for waving to all of us. She has already shared with us some of the resources, of course, most importantly, the report we're talking about in the chat box, but other resources that you may be interested in includes the GFMD background paper on leveraging new technologies to empower migrants, which I had the privilege of writing myself. That's shared with us. And Michelle had mentioned the Abu Dhabi dialogue, leveraging advanced technology to improve labor migration. That report is shared. And of course, a link to each of the 4 platforms that our colleagues will be discussing with us. So based on that introduction, it is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Chung from the Republic of Korea to give his presentation. Mr. Chung, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I would have to excuse ourselves because unlike other speakers, I'm wearing a mask. And this is because we're, as you can see on the screen, we're gathering in a very small room and I'm sitting with my several of my colleagues. So according to the government guidelines, for health reasons, we have to wear all facial masks. And I thank you for understanding that. I'm very much glad to be part of today's webinar, promoting fair and ethical recruitment in a digital world, and share with you the digital platform experience of the employment permit system of Korea. To begin with, I would like to introduce you some of the history and concept of the system. Prior to establishment of the employment permit system, Korea had a different system called the Industrial Trainee Scheme, ITS, from year 1993, which introduced low-skilled migrant workers under a trainee program. This ITS had a major problem related with transparency and administrative procedural issues, such as trainee selection and placement procedures, which were dominantly controlled by private recruitment agencies. And this affected workers' work environment to be conducive to potential corruption. As a result, Korea decided to establish the EPS in 2004 to simplify and consolidate the function of the migrant workers admission system, to effectively address domestic labor shortages, to protect employment opportunities for nationals, and to eliminate corruption by ensuring fair, transparent, and ethical recruitment. The EPS is a cross-border government-to-government recruitment system that aims to regulate and facilitate employment, placement, and job matching of low-skilled workers from other countries. The system initially established partnership with 6 countries, but has since forged memoranda of understanding with 10 other countries, mostly in Southeast Asia, with some others in Central and Western Asia as well. Having said that, let me now move to the EPS digital platform. Acting as a migrant governance system, the EPS is strictly administered through EPS online digital platform and mobile phone application, offering multiple services ranging from application submission and job matching for prospective and current EPS workers and employers to specific welfare and registration reintegration services in EPS workers' countries of origin. In particular, the EPS uses an intranet system in processing applications, job matching, and other technical support services for workers and employers. It has multilingual functions designed to meet the needs of the EPS workers coming from various countries. Sending countries utilize the Sending Public Agency System, SPAS, which functions as a job seeker roster platform that facilitates the recruitment of low-skilled EPS workers for employment in Korea. In the following, I will explain how the digital platform and the information contained in it is actually applied at each stage of the whole employment permit system. First is selection of job seekers from sending countries. In the initial screening process, job seekers need to pass a language proficiency test fully implemented by the Human Resource Development Service of Korea in joint collaboration with the designated public agency in the sending countries. In the EPS online system, prospective workers specifically indicate their industry and workplace location preferences while providing biographical information, including their age, height, weight, and educational attainment and work experiences. HRD Korea verifies the job seekers' registered information, and through the use of points-based rating system, it selects 3 shortlisted candidates for each registered employer to choose from. Second is the job matching process of job seekers with system users. After initial screening is completed, employers select their desired job candidates and prepare standard employment contracts, which were disseminated to prospective workers in advance prior to their arrival in Korea. The standard employment contract is systematically transferred to the sending agency in countries of origin by the SPAS. The EPS primarily facilitates the job matching and visa issuance processes through its digital technology platform. In particular, each job application is systematically monitored by government officials and by workers through the EPS website and its mobile applications. Third is the post-arrival support for employment and change of workplace. EPS workers receive 3 days of mandatory state-led post-arrival job placement training. The aim is to comprehensively inform the workers about their legal rights and obligations, as well as to provide information on culture, attitudes, and norms. In cases where migrant workers choose to change their workplace or industry, a formal application of intent with clear and reasonable justifications is required. This request can be made either to the job center or can be done online through the EPS. The job center is then responsible for finding a new employment match for migrant workers within a 3-month period. During this period, employers may view available pool of migrant workforce candidates through their EPS accounts and can select, contact, and arrange job interviews by telephone or in person. If the digital technology platform becomes inaccessible, a regional job center can alternatively aid or facilitate the local recruitment process between employer and EPS workers. Fourth is reintegration assistance for workers seeking to return to countries of origin. Reintegration services for EPS workers are also provided in a separate section of EPS online platform called Return Job. Key technical services include provision of information on available jobs in the country of origin and information on web links for Korean language and vocational training courses. Implemented in 2011, the Happy Return program facilitates employment for business startups of EPS workers upon their return home by providing necessary training and consultation services at various support and counseling centers operated by HRD Korea. Lastly, I would like to touch upon effective aspects of employment permit system and support subjects. First, transparency, efficiency, and cost. Korea's EPS digital platform focuses on establishing full institutional transparency in recruitment process. To promote such transparency, public institutions under the Ministry of Employment and Labor were designated to administer the EPS and other matters relating to digital recruitment system. In the past, under the ITS, the industrial trainees were selected by the labor recruiters and assigned randomly to an employer. Due to this recruitment structure, employers' preference during the recruitment process were excluded, which resulted in severe job skills mismatches, as well as high workplace turnover rates that averaged up to 80%. Although workers can change workplace within the employment permit system to mitigate job skills mismatch issue, application of new technologies and features, including video embedded profiles of workers, could be viable technical solutions in the long term. Under the ITS, private recruitment agencies were able to independently set their own recruitment market fees because no systematic recruitment process existed. The EPS platform has decreased the recruitment cost. According to HRD Korea, the average recruitment cost of an EPS worker in 2014 was around $941, which is a large reduction compared to the average cost of some $35,000 under the ITS in 2004. However, this may have increased due to COVID-19 as there are costs involved in quarantine measures. Second, oversight and assistance for the protection of EPS workers. To protect working conditions rights of workers, workplaces that hire EPS workers are monitored and inspected annually. Any violations of working conditions or use of forced labor will be subject to penalties, including administrative or judicial actions, employment permit revocation or restriction, and disadvantages placed on new EPS worker placements. If an EPS worker is placed under forced labor conditions or exposed to assault and is no longer be able to continue working in the workplace as a result, change of his or her workplace will be taken as a measure. Recently, as a result of law revision, it has become mandatory for employers of EPS workers to take part in the education on workers' rights and labor-related issues. The EPS digital platform will keep records so that EPS officers would know which employers fulfill their obligations as to the education requirements. A counseling center for EPS workers and 45 support centers are operating for counseling and support services for workers in forced labor or other vulnerable situations. To actively identify damages of EPS workers, interpreters are accompanying the case investigations by labor inspectors. Interpretation services are also provided during the workplace inspections so that labor inspectors can interview other workers. This concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung, for that comprehensive presentation. Now, I've got a very quick question of clarification, and then I have other questions which I will put to you, but you can answer after we've heard from the three orders. The immediate question, which if you can kindly answer, is, please repeat for us the numbers you gave relating to the recruitment cost now and before.
Sir, if I repeat what I've said in the presentation, according to the HRD Korea, that was information gathered in year 2016. According to them, the cost for EPS worker in 2014 was about $941 in US terms. But before the EPS system, there was a system called ITS, and under that system, the cost was around $35,000 US in 2004.
That's what I thought you said, but it's a remarkable number, so it's worth paying attention to it. Let me ask you other questions which you can reflect on and give us an answer later. Number one is artificial intelligence use in the multilingual system that you have, or do you have interpreters, live interpreters on it? Number two, the important job matching process that happens. To what extent is AI used and where it stops? From your presentation, it appears as if AI may be used in the job matching until you've got the short list whereby the employers then do the rest by individuals. If AI is used in the job matching, what does the system do to check against algorithmic bias, which have been mentioned as a problem? Another question is, you mentioned when one is not using the app or the platform, the role of the regional job centers. That makes me think, what is the backup system? Do the regional job center act as a backup, non-tech backup, as it were? And final question would be, where you are now, having gone through this transformation since the earlier iteration of the platform, what are the current main challenges and opportunities for the platform? Thank you so much, Mr. Chung. We'll come back to you after we've heard from our three other colleagues. It is now my pleasure and privilege to introduce Mr. Fauzan Al-Muhaidib from Takamul to give his presentation. Over to you, Fauzan.
Thank you so much, Jibril. I really appreciate. Can I ask the guys in the support to share my screen? Yeah, thank you so much. And Thank you for you all to give us this chance to present our experiment and our journey that has been implemented for the domestic labor. We will cover the digital transformation that we have done for the domestic labor services in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So could you go to the next slide, please? So in our presentation, we will cover 5 main things, pillars, and each one has its own information. The first all, we'll talk about introduction, showing the market size or the number of the domestic laborers in Saudi Arabia. Then we will talk about how did we start, about why we started initiating our program and how we did this one. After that, what is the main initiatives that we care about, and what is Musanid, and what is the life cycle that we are covering, and we'll give very small and brief about our example of the system. Then we'll talk about our achievement and impact, and the last thing that we'll talk about our partners. So could you go to the next slide? In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we are talking about 3.4 million domestic laborers working in Saudi Arabia in different occupations. We are talking about 26% of them is females and 74 are males. And this drives us to care about this file. This is an important file for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we care about it, and we want to make sure that it is moving in the right way. So we are targeting not to develop a system. So could you go to the next slide? We are targeting to do something more and more of this one. So what is our final target is to create an ecosystem. But starting from this one, we need to define our stakeholders, and we need to meet these stakeholders. So first of all, we meet with the government represented from different countries. We're talking about 14 countries. And hear about their challenges and what they know about this field, and what is the expectation, and what is the challenges related to the domestic laborers who is working outside of their countries. Then we went to have an interview, face interview with too many different type of employers in Saudi Arabia, and we have surveys, direct interviews, and different type of surveys to understand the whole ecosystem. The other side, and this is the main pillar that our stakeholder that we care about, is the domestic workers. We have done too many different type of interviews before coming to work in Saudi Arabia, and after they came to Saudi Arabia, after they work for a couple of months in Saudi Arabia, and before they go back to their countries. We need to understand the challenges. We need to understand the whole processes that they are facing, and what is the thing that we need to care about in our journey. After that, we have done too many interviews with the private recruitment offices in Saudi Arabia or outside of Saudi Arabia or in the sending countries to understand their also challenges from their perspective. Could you go to the other slide? The main challenges we have defined for this journey is in different type of the life cycle. So one of them is protecting the worker rights, and I have put it the first one because it's the most important. The second one is related to the protection of the employer right. The third one is optimizing the processes and the duration and the quality of the services. The fourth one, we're talking about transparency. This is very, 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 very important topic related to data and using this data to enhance the processes. And traceability is so important. The last one, which I meant to put it the last one, so I can take some time to talk about it, is eliminating the black market and eliminating illegal activities in the recruitment cycle. And we care about this one by using the technology. The technology is helping in this field. So could we go to the next slide? From that one, we started creating Musanid. What is Musanid from our side? We see it. It's an ecosystem. It's a big initiative aimed to improve the domestic labor field through a relationship and contribution between the public sector and the private sector. The program and the initiative meant to provide everything would improve the recruitment domestic workers. When we talk about digitalization, we need to talk about the ecosystem, since the digitalization is part of the ecosystem. Changing the regulation, changing the procedure is the most, this is the other pillars that we need to care about. So some of the services need to be enhanced within Saudi Arabia, and some of the services need to be enhanced outside of Saudi Arabia. Could we go to the next slide, please? So now we talk about the processes in very high level. Now we have four pillars. Each pillar had its own initiative. So there is initiative related to the recruitment processes before doing the recruitment and starting the recruitment. One of them is giving the permission, who is the eligible people to recruit, based also on their experience, based on their record in Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the citizens of Saudi Arabia. And there is too many things that we need to prepare. The other one is during the recruitment inside Saudi Arabia. For example, the relationship between the employers and the recruitment offices in Saudi Arabia. The third one is the during the recruitment processes outside Saudi Arabia in the sending countries, and for example, preventing unauthorized and illegal activities. The fourth one, which is the most, this is a very important part, and we need to care about the recruitment. It's end by going back to their original countries, the domestic workers. So we care about while they are working in Saudi Arabia till they leave, what is the initiatives under this umbrella. Could we go to the next slide? Here we take the whole recruitment cycle in very high level. The green one is inside Saudi Arabia. The yellow one is outside of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Could you go to the next slide, please? This is an example of the system. I don't have the luxury time to go with a demo, sorry for that, but this is a very high level. We have the system to provide a transparent type of recruitment offices, and it has been digitalized. So the contract has been digitalized. The contractual processes from A to Z has been digitized. Also, the employer, by using their apps or using the websites, they can go and see the CVs of the domestic workers, and they can follow up and understand where is the recruitment cycle is stopping now. Also, from the other side, we have enabled the BI system to show the data related to each country and their citizens in Saudi Arabia. Where are they? And too many data, they ask for it, and we share it with them since they are their citizens at the end. And we supported them. And I will take this chance to thank them for the whole support they provided to us in the last couple of years. So this is our link. If there is anyone who would like to go and use the system and to see the experience that has been developed, we have developed in two languages within Saudi Arabia and different languages in the sending countries. Could you go to the other slide? So after we implemented the authentication contract, for example, and implementing also the recruitment cycle, what we have gained a big impact. For example, we reduce the dispute, either the number of dispute, and reduce the number of the duration of the dispute. We can solve it immediately. The recruitment processes, duration and performance has been enhanced, enabling the wage protection system. And we are now monitoring, we have the luxury to monitor the salaries has been sent to or given to the domestic workers, so they can decide either to use it or they can send it back to their countries. So opening back accounts is one of the initiatives has been established after we have implemented the contract authentication. And finally, we can say about the clear and effective transparent processes has been implemented fully and with the high satisfaction from all stakeholders who is using the system. Could you go to the next slide? in very high level, I'll take it. So there are 2.5 million users using the system. We are talking about 1,400 internal recruitment offices in Saudi Arabia who is using the system and working together with 5,577 external private recruitment office in sending countries. So we have to do this one. We have conducted 139 workshop or training sessions within Saudi Arabia or outside Saudi Arabia with the whole stakeholders. We're talking about either the government or recruitment offices or any other stakeholders who would like to hear about these sessions. In the system, we have, alhamdulillah, we have done and processed more than 10 million transactions. Starting from the system, we started in 2015, and now we have 1.2 million resumes or CVs has been published over the system by the sending recruitment offices. Could you go to the next slide, please? I would like to thank our colleagues in ILO. They have worked very close with us in the last couple of years, giving us the guidelines and showing us what is the best procedure that need to be done. And we have again we take their guidelines and implement it over our system. So thank you for them. Also, I'd like to thank you, our partners who was working very hard with us to implement the system in their countries. And this is the final of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Fauzan, for demonstrating the integrated nature of the Mossadegh platform. The question I have for you to answer later is the level of low education among domestic workers is quite high. And to what extent do the workers, the 2.5 million users, have real access to it? Because we can see that there are the recruiters and the agents on the other side. Are they the ones who are completing this form and going through it with the workers? To what extent do we have real agency and sort of empowerment of the domestic workers themselves? Your reflections on that would be most helpful at the end of this presentation. Thank you again, Fauzan. Now it is my pleasure and privilege to invite Mr. Sirijayan Kumar Sao from the Republic of India to give his presentation on the Immigrant platform. Over to you, Mr. Kumar Sao.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Gabriel, for allowing me to speak on our flagship program on migration platform. And I wish everyone a very happy Diwali from India. And I have a brief presentation on the migration platform. I will be sharing my screen. So basically, I will be speaking on the digital migration platform of India and Minister of External Affairs Immigrant project. And this is the website emigrate.gov.in. Basically, before that, I will be just touching the regulatory framework of migration in India. It is governed by Immigration Act 1983, and basically it allows overseas recruitment business to be conducted only through registered recruiting agent from Ministry of External Affairs. So we have around 1,800 recruiting agents, registered recruiting agents, and the regulatory framework involves 13 protector of immigrants offices located at various cities, and they all work under Protector General of Immigrants (PGE) at New Delhi. So the vulnerable categories have been identified as a thumb rule by giving them a particular category of passports called immigration check required passport. They are called, and so basically we give certain more priority to the vulnerable section. So they have been identified. If they basically fulfill these three conditions, a person going through having a ECR passport and emigrating to one of the 18 ECR countries. Now, ECR countries are basically those countries where bulk of the skilled and unskilled workers are going from India, and they are going on an employment visa. And if these three conditions are ticked, the immigrant will not be allowed to go from the airport if he is not having the immigration clearance from the Protector of Immigrant Office. So this is the basic framework of the regulatory framework. Now, how it is implemented through eMigrate, it's a 100% paperless platform, and these are the stakeholders which are connected online, seamless through on it. So immigrants, Indian missions abroad, the Bureau of Immigration at the airports, Ministry of External Affairs by POE, PGOE, recruiting agents, insurance agencies, the foreign employers, project exporters, state government, and the law enforcing agencies. Now, this is the basic flow of the immigration clearance process. Now, the foreign employer, first of all, he has to register on the eMigrate platform. Till now, since the launch of the eMigrate, we have around 2 lakh foreign employees from different ECR countries registered with us. And for that, they need to apply online to the Indian embassy abroad, and then once their application is approved, they get an access to the eMigrate platform by getting a login ID. And once they get a login ID, they are able to see all the registered recruiting agents having license online. They can view, and that one of the licensed recruiting agent they can choose, and they can place their demand online. And then once the recruiting agent accepts the demand of the workers by the foreign employer along with the terms and conditions and the employment contract conditions, he accepts the demand, and then once he accepts the demand, he is allowed to conduct the recruitment activities in India. Now that recruitment activities are also monitored, like interview permission and where he is going to conduct the interview through eMigrate system. That is also all automatic without any human intervention. And interviews, advertisements, all are basically mapped into the eMigrate system. And once a candidate is selected, the selected candidate details are given to the foreign employer, and the visa is issued. Foreign employer gets the visa, and the employment agreement is generated online, and then the foreign employer and the recruiting agent uploads in the eMigrate system. Now, in the whole process, the only non-system generated document here is visa. All other documents, right from the employment agreement, demand, interview permission, everything is system generated. No external documents are available in the system. Now, once all this process is complete, the concerned recruiting agent applies for the immigration clearance from the concerned protector of immigrant, and the POE goes through the system, all the application, and then grants the immigration clearance. Now that immigration clearance also goes online because the Bureau of Immigration is connected on this system. It goes online, and the immigrant need not carry any papers or any clearance stickers to the airport. Once he goes to the airport, if he flashes his passport, automatically the immigration clearance and all the employer and employee details are flashed onto the Bureau of Immigration terminals, and he is allowed to go. Now, since 2015, around 30 lakh migrant workers have emigrated through this system, and so we are in a position to leverage the database Now we have got a full-fledged grievance redressal mechanism working over the e-migrate system. So now there are any worker facing in distress situation or facing contractual violation, he can complain in various forms, either by email or by toll-free numbers or through Indian Embassy. Can log in his complaint. Once the complaint is logged in, automatically the tickets goes to the protector of immigrants, the foreign employer, and the concerned recruiting agent. And if it is not resolved within certain period, it is escalated. And depending upon the situation, either we can block the recruiting agent from doing further activities in the e-migrate, or we can block the foreign employer. So as I already told, all the stakeholders are on a single platform online. All the immigrant details, his passport details. Now his passport also is validated online automatically in the system. Then only his application, the passport database is connected internally with us. The foreign employer details, once he registered, the foreign employer, automatically all his details comes into is captured and authenticated online. Immigrant and all his details can be tracked simply by entering his passport number. Availability of immigrant travel status. Now whether an immigrant has traveled and when he has returned and how many times he has traveled, we can all track. An ID card, a special ID card, once he applies for immigration clearance, an ID card is given to the immigrant. And e-locker with all the copies of relevant immigrant documentation is available. And if a migrant worker loses all his documents, by simply entering his passport number, he can download all his documents. So, and what these are the basically, it enhances the reach and ability to regulate the migration process, it enhances the tracking of migrants country-wise. Now it has basically during COVID times, we were able to repatriate when the international flights were not on. We were able to repatriate around 29,000 migrant workers because we were having the full database and reach out to them when in need. Facilitate the gathering of information. Now we are in the e-migrate project, website. We continuously updates by taking input from the embassy and from various law enforcing agencies, the illegal agents and the legal agents, all, and registration of stakeholders, information availability to the migrant workers, their employment contract, visa, insurance policy, swift online grievance redressal mechanism, as I already explained, pre-immigration formalities, also all online raise demand, advertisement, recruitment process. Rescue repatriation is also now we are able to leverage the database. Immigrant related information for trend analysis for migration for research bodies and government ministries. Now this is what I had explained, that faster processing by missions, validation of passport is automatic, it's paperless. We can track this application online by various methods, improved online grievance management system, and all the fees payments are online, and dashboards, various type of dashboards are available to various stakeholders to monitor their state. Now, mandatory policy also is integrated in the e-migrate system only, wherein every worker going abroad is given a 275 rupees mandatory policy. So it covers a accidental death cover of 10 lakhs and hospitalization expension of 1 lakh, and all other type of facilities are available, and it is basically fairly well utilized system. Now these are the basically benchmarks. It started in 2014, and various improvisation and modifications were done over the period of time until now. This data is of 2016, but till now over 3 million immigration clearances have been granted, and around 2 lakhs foreign employees are registered with us. Again, the same processes, the various stakeholders, what advantages they get out of the paperless mechanism is given here. Now, again, the same thing. Now, one of the major process, what it brings that previously the physical immigration clearance sticker used to be stuck on the passport, that was removed, and it has become total online. Now this is the e-locker. Immigrant can download all these documents anytime by simply entering its passport number, visa copy, employment contract, passport copy, PB, this policy, insurance policy, e-sticker, immigrant ID card, immigrant photograph, and immigration clearance application. These are the basically details of the for lodging its grievance and complaints, and it is available in various languages. Another system of the Ministry of External Affairs, Madad, that is Consular Grievance Monitoring System, is also integrated with e-migrate grievance system. So any grievance registered in Madad automatically seamlessly comes to is registered in the e-migrate also, and vice versa. So we are able to get more accessibility to the workers. Now this is basically a sample of the electronic ID card. It contains its basic details. Now, since I was telling now it is fairly matured system now, so we are able to leverage the network and the database. Now, seafarers is having a separate regulatory framework. Their recruiting agents are called RPSL, Recruitment and Placement of Seafarers. They are governed by Merchant Shipping Act. But the problem was that they were not having the similar type of migration platform. So we utilized in 2018 there was no methodology to check whether the seafarer is going through a registered license agent or an illegal agent. So we had implemented e-migrate system for seafarers also in 2018. Here, since it does not require immigration clearance, so only the access is allowed to the licensed recruiting RPSL agents to enter the data of the seafarer in the Digi shipping website, and we transmit e-migrate transmit transparently to the Bureau of Immigration. So only those seafarers who are recruited by licensed and legal RPSL agents are allowed to, and till now we are able to capture the 20 lakh seafarers have gone. Indian seafarers have utilized this system since 2018. And another
Mr. Sao, sorry to interrupt. It's Jibril here. Given the time limit, can I give you 1 minute to?
Yeah, my last slide, second last slide. Yeah. So we have got another digital platform wherein we are giving the pre-departure orientation training to the workers. So it is available in offline as well as online mode. So here, by accessing this platform, a worker specifically helped in during the COVID time. So we were able to utilize the PDOT resources to the migrant workers through this platform. So this is the screenshot of the migrant, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sao, for that comprehensive presentation. The only question I have for you to reflect and give us an answer later is you mentioned that where there are grievances and you've got findings, you are able to take off agents or foreign employers from the platform. It would be good if you could give us later an indication of about how many of those instances have happened since the platform's been operating, to give us an idea on the effectiveness of that mechanism. Thank you so much. And the last presentation we have would be from Mr. Lambert Kleidman from the European Commission. Over to you, Mr. Kleidman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibril. Thank you very much for inviting me to this international webinar, and thank you to ILO and IOM for putting this in place. It reminds me as well that at times we were traveling to all the nice countries of the speakers and had good face-to-face discussions. but it's good to learn even through a webinar what the colleagues all over the world are doing and what we can actually use from their experience. So maybe we move immediately to the first slide. I would like to, can you move on? Thank you. I would like to explain a bit a different background to what some of the speakers have presented. So in the European Union, we have something what we call the free movement of workers. So meaning every worker has the right to live and work in another EU member state. So we do not have visa requirements and these kind of things. And we have the right as well to be not discriminated as regards remuneration, working conditions, and so on. So I think that's really a huge difference. And I should say as well, when we talk in the European Union about migration, we talk about movements from third countries, so meaning from outside the Union into the Union. So to give you a few figures, currently there are more than 30 million EU citizens living in another EU member state, which represents around 3.8% of the working age population. And on top of that, we have something very specific probably for some of the countries of the European Union. We have a lot of actually 1.5 million workers living in one country, but going either on daily or weekly basis to another country to work and then return. This is a growing number over the years, better traffic connection and similar things makes this possible. And maybe just one word, we used to have per year around 1 million new movers, more or less. We're still analyzing what has happened during 2020 with Corona lockdowns and so on, but obviously this number has gone down. At the same time, what we experienced is that there was a lot of return mobility, and the mobility spells of the mobile workers got shorter. So that's something we need to further assess what kind of consequences these will have. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk today about EURES, and I will focus very much on the technical platform. You should know as well that there's, on top of this technical platform, there's a real network of people, EURES advisors, we call them, in the European Union, but as well in the other countries indicated like Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. And they work in public employment services, social partner organizations, or other employment services. And these are the people that are helping the job seekers if there's a need, even for handling the EURES portal. 1,000 does not sound so much, but these are only those that we have ourselves appointed and trained, but they have lots of additional helpers. We call them EURES assistants, and we have as well made major efforts of mainstreaming EURES services into the public employment services. So basically, everyone should give, every advisor there in the 31 countries should be able to give a minimum information on this. So what are we doing in EURES? So there's a very strong focus on information, and that fits as well to the fair and ethical recruitment. You need to inform people, workers that go from one country to another, what are their rights, what they can expect. We do pre-selection of candidates, and we offer matching and placement assistance, and we have as well developed post-placement assistance with the help of the network in the countries. And then on top of that, we have these platforms, the job mobility portal, which is a relatively big portal with currently around 3.7 million job offers. So you see, this number actually changes quite often, but still it's a significant number. Obviously, not all of them are necessarily targeted at intra-EU mobility, but everyone has a right to apply. And if the employer says, well, I think this is a better candidate from the other country, he can hire this person without any administrative work. And we have currently around 900 CVs online. That changes as well, you can imagine. So what I've a third box there, which became very popular this year, and late last year we are organizing online job days, meaning we bring employers and job seekers into contact based on real job vacancies. We have really accelerated this last year. So we have much more than the 25 from last year, this year. And we have taken up again in the last weeks and months, the real job matching events. So today there are, I think, 2 events taking place, one in Slovenia and one, if I've seen it correctly, in Ireland. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit how EURES works, and this is basically focusing on the self-service tools. So we have job seekers, either they register themselves through the EURES self-service, or their CVs are sent to EURES via the EURES members and partners, so public employment services, private employment service, whoever is an admitted EURES member and partner. They send CVs, and then either the job seeker does the search himself, or it is one of the EURES advisors, or it is one of the other PES advisors who thinks that this person in front of him at that moment is particularly suited for this and this work in this and this country, or he has a specific skill that might be more needed in another country than in his current country. And then we have the employers. We have the employers that are registered. They can search through the profiles. The employers themselves are, let's say, not necessarily as active as we would have thought they would be, but very often they use as well the EURES advisors or the PES advisors to make a search for them, to do a pre-selection, and so on and so on. So this is let's say, this was for the last 25 years the model, the business model of EURES. We are changing now a bit, meaning we want, and I mentioned it earlier, we want to mainstream EURES into the service offer of the public and private employment service, whoever is admitted. So what we offer are APIs, application programming interfaces, which allows our EURES members and partners basically to work in their own systems with the data of EURES, which obviously makes it as well a bit more difficult to follow up on what is happening, but it allows the advisors to work in one system and not to switch between 2 systems. So we expect actually a much huger outreach by these. There's as well something mentioned to which I come back, ESCO. Maybe just a short word about it right now. All these systems that we are bringing together, the 31 systems, most of them are using their own occupational classification. Some of them have a skills classification on top of that, and we need to make these systems understand each other. But I come back to it in a minute. Next slide, please. So what do we have? And I really mention only a few things here. So we have quite a lot of information on living and working conditions in the 31 member countries. We have all this information, or most of this information, we have in 26 different languages, which is a major part of budget. And I remember, I think one of the recommendations from the IOM in the introductory speech was investing, constantly investing. So it's not only technical or investment in technical infrastructure, it is as well interpretation costs. And so far we are not fully satisfied with the automatic translation tools. They help to a certain extent, but for certain legal questions, we need to control everything. Then we have, obviously, I said it, that is the EURES Find a Job. So the person looking for a job can do it in self-service, which works for, let's say, the more skilled persons, or the more digital skilled person, I should say. And we have the same thing for the find candidates for the employers. I have not mentioned it now, but both functions can be done via the EURES advisors and assistants if there's a request for help. What we are currently working on is the EURES matching engine. So we have a search function, but now we are very soon rolling out the EURES matching engine. It is based actually on the information that we get in terms of skills and occupations from the job vacancies, and what we can retrieve from the CVs. And this allows us as well to show the results in all languages, because when we switch to this classification, 80% of the information is codified. Maybe a short word about our staff. So they have their own extranet. For us, it's very important that they connect and that they have the tools to exchange formally or informally. I mean, a lot of job placements are done in direct context between the EURES staff. A lot of assistance in case of difficulties is given directly by bilateral exchange between EURES advisors. We are not necessarily aware of what is going on, but they have these community of EURES advisors that works together for years. They're proud of their jobs. They want to help each other and their clients. So let's say you have some issues about a Spanish worker in Germany, and a document is missing for whatever thing, for the school or for his son or her son. Then it is very often much easier to go via the EURES staff to get the explanation, and maybe even get the documents from the two countries together. So this is really an important aspect of what EURES does. And I still want to say a word about data security. And again, this goes again with these recommendation from the IOM about investments. We have to invest more and more into data security, and I guess this is the same for all colleagues that spoke. What we hear from, and we just have recently a user survey, well, a smaller one, but with very qualitative interviews. People posting their CV on the EURES portal trust us. They trust us as European Commission, or they trust their governments that they don't do, or that we don't do anything wrong with the data behind it. And I think this is an aspect that should not be underestimated. It is certainly a major issue if people have doubts about the correct handling of a lot of data there. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, this is almost my last slide. I would like still to explain a bit what we have done in the last years. And I have to admit, even if it's referring to 2016, we are still not completely finished with these modernization agenda.
Mr. Kleinman, I'll give you 2 minutes to wrap up if you don't mind. Yes.
Thank you. I will finish. So fair mobility. So this is a political agenda of the European Commission and the member states that we want to make sure that applicable labor standards and legal requirements are respected. We have created recently a European Labour Authority that has the task of enforcing the rules together with labor inspectorates, and they will be as well doing the operational aspects of EURES from now on. We have made some progress in reaching out to new partners, so we are covering more and more private employment services and other relevant actors. And by getting more of these private actors in, we have as well a better transparency on the European labor market, so we have more CVs and more job offers. And as I said, we are working on these automated multilingual skills-based matching. I promised you a word about ESCO. So ESCO is the classification, European classification for skills, competences, and occupations. So every member state, every member and partner of EURES who has a different system classification has to map to ESCO. That is the only way to make us understand each other in terms of job vacancies and CVs. And if we do not do this correctly, all these matching will not produce the results that we want. We do not want to have lists of matching results of 300 offers or more. We want 10, 20 good ones. Okay, so I think I can skip the last point, maybe the very last slide, which only gives you some more information about EURES. I draw your attention to these evaluation studies that are not done by us. This is really done by third parties. We had very limited influence on what they wrote, and it's not always what we would have written or what we would have hoped for, but that's how it goes. And it's interesting, and it gives us food for thought for further development. And I think I close with this. Sorry if I was too long. Back to you, Gabriel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kleinman, for giving us actually a slightly different perspective, that is a platform within the European Union, a common market. We now have about 10 minutes or so to get responses and perhaps the possibility of one or two who will raise their hands. If you remember, I'd ask the panelists particular questions. I would kindly ask if you can take not more than 2 minutes to give a response. One or two of you have been given extra questions by Sophia, so you can take the opportunity to answer them. But Mr. Kleinman, the question, where you're coming from, you talked about interoperability. We did have a question from Sita Sharma saying, how effectively could this system link up with each other? Is this something to consider? And I think the experience of the EU may be relevant for the other platform. So some of the speakers, you may choose to say a word or two in your response to that. We also had another question from Asanga Ranasingh, who said, how can regional consultative processes, such as the Colombo process, support and promote the use of such systems and contribute to improve and scale up? Perhaps, Mr. Sao, if that is something you want to say a word or two in your response, that would be helpful. So I would now call on, in the same order as we presented, Mr. Chung to give his 2-minute response, to the questions I ask and any orders that may have been sent to him. Mr. Chung, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me at the beginning just correct the numbers that I given. I think I made a mistake in terms of saying the number, the sending costs of 2004, that was 3,500 instead of 35,000. So that's a very little correction. Going through your questions in terms of the order, what's the role of AI in providing multilingual services of the whole system? I think we're not, we don't take AI technology in terms of providing multilingual services, but instead we do have 16 different language sites. So in other words, we are having 16 different sites so that workers from the various countries can select their own language platform sites if they want to. Moving on to the second question, the role of AI in the matching services. I think the information input by employers and workers can be serve as a very big data, and the digital platform tries to find best matches and shows a list of candidates as a whole. And normally, for employers, when they see the full candidate list, normally top 3 is the closest match. The third question, in terms of the backup system, unfortunately, we do not have an experience in terms of breakdown of the system, but unfortunately, we do not either have backup system. But instead, we do perform our data backup every day. So when the system breaks down, we need to resort to the data backup. And while the whole system is restored, and my colleague just said that the restoration requires up to 48 hours for full restoration. I think the final question was a very important one. And what are the limits and challenges of the current system? I think our current system uses a basic framework developed in 2010, and that's quite old now. And the system shows the tendency of slowing down, and it cannot adapt to the up-to-date technological changes. And therefore, there's a limitation in terms of system expansion. So in order to correct those problems, we're going through a reforming process to replace all the facilities and all the software. And we're aiming to finish that reform process until the middle of 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those responses. Now we go to Fauzan.
Thank you, Jibril. Thank you for giving me the chance again. So I have reviewed 3 questions. 1 has been raised by you and 2 from the chat. So I'll start with the first one. For the users of the system and officially the offices, they are verified, and we don't allow any verified or authorized offices or any providers to use the system. So anyone who would like to provide a service need to be authorized by the sending country's government. And also then we will verify them by, there is a sequence of registration, and we make sure they use the system by themselves, by using also the security system, which is the 2 authentication service. Okay, and this is part 1. The second one is related to the complaint of the workers themselves. In Saudi Arabia, we have established a department related to them, and there is a direct phone number they can contact. There is 9 languages they can contact. The number is 19911 in Saudi Arabia, and they can put their complaint. Also, they can use the system to put their also complaint if there is any issues they are facing. The department is responsible to give them the instruction and also to communicate with them and take care of them while they are inside Saudi Arabia till their dispute has been finished. The third question is related to the complaints between the offices and the recruitment offices outside of Saudi Arabia, in the sending countries, and inside Saudi Arabia. This is a business relationship between them. We have governed this relationship, and there is a complaint system. So I want to make sure that we deliver the right message. The offices in Saudi Arabia and outside Saudi Arabia, they are our partners. We need to care about both of them, and we care about their complaints. And operating them in the right way is in favor of everyone, and we would like to help all of them, and we be fair for doing anything. So there is a complaint system. Each of them could put their complaint in the system, and we can the team who is reviewing the complaint will contact both of them and find a result between these two offices and to close these cases. This has been established before 3 years, and it's moving smoothly. I think the dispute takes not taking more than 3 days between the offices. This is from very high level, and thank you again for giving me the chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fauzan, for those responses. And I now invite Mr. Sao to give his response to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Two specific things you have asked from me. One was how many grievances we have registered in the e-migrate since we have started the grievance redressal mechanism in the e-migrate. So till now we have received registered around 10,000 grievances, and in that it's a mix of it has the input, the sources have been from the different sources, either from the call center or the email or personal walk-in, or whether it has come through the Madad portal. So roughly around 10,000 we have received, but many things that has not come through e-migrate also, but we have leveraged the database, like I have told that we realized the database during the repatriation of workers in the COVID time. Second question was regarding that Colombo process, consultation and other consultation processes. Though I'm not equipped to answer that, but one of the major implementation that I have been part of is the pre-departure orientation training that we had started in 2018. And till pre-corona times, we were able to achieve in around 1.5 years, 1 lakh migrant workers we were able to give across 30 centers in India, pre-departure orientation training, and we have started online. So we have reached that figure. And third thing regarding the interconnectivity of the migration platforms. So we e-migrate platform is in final stages of connecting with the labor platform of Saudi Arabia and UAE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Participants, I'll kindly ask, maybe we may run about 5 minutes over. I'll just ask for your indulgence. In the next 2 minutes, Mr. Kleinman, before you answer the questions, I would just read out the other questions for everybody to hear that have been put by colleagues. Olga asks on the URES job offers, is there any measure in place to make sure that language included in job offers, at least in the original language, is gender neutral and inclusive as to not discourage job seekers that face already more challenges to find a job? We also have another question from Dewi, who said, where is the position of placement agencies in these digital platforms? These are general questions. Mr. Kleinman, you are not obliged to answer them, but I think for all of us to hear as part of this exchange, it would be good just to read them out. We also have Ralph asking making a number of points, and he said, the general question to everybody, would you agree to a recruitment system that allow migrant workers to fall on a debt bondage system? I suppose that's a rhetorical question. And it allows migrant workers to pay a big amount of money to be able to have employment in another country, to pay brokers' fees, all of the things that constitute non-ethical. recruitment? I suppose that's a rhetoric question. Kleinman, Lambert, I pass back to you for you to take 2 minutes to answer the specific questions that were addressed to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I try to be short and give several answers, and colleagues may want to add something. Maybe to the question from Ralph, Euros services are cost-free. I mean, no one has to pay something for it. There are some specific services for employers that need to be paid for, but that's really very, very particular. Now, the question was from Sita Sharma, sorry for the pronunciation. Well, our systems link to each other. Yes, they talk to each other, but still it requires, it is technically everything is possible, but in the end, you need to make sure that the information is really understood the right way. And that's why I was talking about ESCO. We need to make sure that the skill in one language is correctly translated into another language. This is not necessarily something easily done. Even with AI, it is not so easy to do. So sometimes you really need to look into the details and make sure that we all understand the same thing, although we use different words for it. There was a question from Heike about feedback mechanisms. Well, we have a help desk. You can always complain to us. I know a lot of people do that, and they make sometimes very good proposals how to improve the system. We are a public administration. We get letters to our commissioners complaining, so that's as well very good. And obviously the Euros advisors are there to help, even if certain things cannot be easily fixed by them. Now, the last question where I would like to say a word is about the gender neutral speech. There's a lot of legislation in place about anti-discrimination. So you are not allowed to write in a job offer, I want a strong man aged 20 to 22 to do this work. This is not allowed. These will be taken offline from the public employment service. You have to be open. I mean, you can still describe the work how it is, but you cannot. You are not allowed to define what is the desired characteristic in too many discriminatory ways for the workers that you are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kleinman, and thank to the entire panel for your very helpful illustration of the different platforms. I would just make very short observations, 3 short observations before passing on. It is known that technology and the use of technology in recruitment and other aspects is the reality. It is not restricted just to recruitment. This is now part of the e-government policies of many governments. So that is the fact. It's about how best we use it. And along those lines, I think from what we've heard and what the report shows is that there is need for not occasional, but continuous improvement of the platforms to ensure the ethical recruitment, even better and fairer systems as we learn on those platforms. Second point I want to make is that this perhaps is an opportunity to deal a deadly blow to unethical recruiters and scammers. Technology can be used as an equalizer to allow the ethical recruiters and the formal ones to outcompete and take out of the market the irresponsible and, of course, sometimes criminal scammers who are in the market that exploit the migrant workers and eliminate the so-called irregular market, as it were. And the third point I would make is relating to backups. It's been mentioned in the recommendations from IOM and ILO about digital divide. That also is a reality. So although it is reality that we will be digital on these platforms, digital divide is a reality and it's likely to remain so for a while. So it is important to have measures, not only for backups of systems, but exemptions for those who legitimately, or whatever their socioeconomic reasons are not able to access this. They must not be frozen out and kicked out of the privileges and opportunities that the digital platforms create. That means that one way to make that happen is to integrate civil society and migrant support mechanisms and organizations that exist, to integrate them in so that they are able to act as an intermediary to help those who are excluded from the systems, not only for them to access it, but also to help them have the skills and the ability to use the platforms. Because we, of course, need to realize that lack of education does not mean lack of tech savviness. And the technology itself, with the use of vocal and voice facilities and functionalities, allow people who are not literate to be able to use the technology and benefit from all of the advantages it offers. I thank ILO and IOM and the UN network again, and I take this opportunity to now hand over to Mr. Mohammed El Zarkani, the Chief of Mission of IOM in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Mohammed, over to you.
Jibril, it's lovely to see you again after meeting you in the ADD, and you make it very difficult for me to close after this very eloquent wrap-up, but I'll try to complement what you said as much as I can. And let me start by saying, by reflecting really, as we ended this webinar, let me reflect on the beginning of this exercise. So a couple of years ago, IOM Bahrain and ILO's regional office for the Arab states spoke of the momentum building in the region, really on the considerations of digital technology for strengthening different processes related to labor migration. It was against this backdrop that IOM and ILO really decided to work together on a study to examine government facilitated recruitment platforms. It really allowed us the junction to analyze and reflect on preliminary recommendations on different modalities really that we were seeing at that time, to how to leverage new technologies to advocate for strengthened recruitment practices. And it really is with great pleasure to be part of this vibrant discussion today, hearing from the officials from Korea, Saudi Arabia, India, Europe, has been invaluable really to understand more on the lived experiences and the lessons learned. So what is clear? Digital technologies can be key vehicles in reducing the overall vulnerabilities migrant workers may face during the recruitment and employment. A few examples spoken of today included debt bondage, lack of access to accurate information, and contract substitution. When mobilized correctly, these platforms can lead to more effective job matching and placements, bettering the outcomes for all really. And this was particularly underlined with the EURES portal and the matching engine. Such investments can also have the potential of reducing the recruitment costs of workers. And this was highlighted by our colleague from Korea, which saw a significant decrease in the span of 10 years after introducing the EPS. E-recruitment platforms are seen to be the avenues that decrease labor disputes as well, and time required to be able to successfully complete the recruitment process. And this was highlighted by our KSA colleagues on Musenet. Some really of the good practices that struck me. These platforms can play a key role in communicating information on rights and obligations and roles and responsibilities. This was detailed not only with regards to the EPS, but also we heard that from EURES. As Mr. Kleiman said, the clear and transparent information can play a big impact for skills matching and the recruitment experience. Considering also availability of information and instruction in relevant language is also a very important investment and consideration. Digital technologies, as well as we know, can also strengthen and streamline grievance mechanisms. As we saw from Immigrant, a migrant worker has access to a number of different portals to submit complaints. But also when looking at domestic workers, recognized as one of the most vulnerable groups of migrant workers, investments and efforts to create more oversight of the process and reduce possible situations of exploitation is very critical. And we've seen that from our colleagues in Saudi Arabia, specifically with the obviously with the Musannad platform. There's substantial, what we appreciated as well a lot is there's substantial consultations with a range of different stakeholders that was done in preparation for the development of the Musannad platform, looking at government, employers, domestic workers, internal and external recruitment agencies, where it's a very good practice to show how the consultation part is very important in the development. But I go back to what Jibril was mentioning as well. It's very important as well when you continue to improve those platforms that you remember to re-engage with these specific stakeholders, specifically ones such as the migrant workers themselves, but also civil society organizations, and so that may have very important or critical contributions to provide. These are the good things, but there are also clear warnings and guidance that we need to be aware of. Yes, these platforms must be seen as a tool and cannot operate in a vacuum. Oversight, regulations, and political will are key components that remain to be needed to be put in place for these technology to be able to better recruitment experiences. The design also, if centered on accessibility and developed with a holistic and multi-stakeholder approach, is critical for the sustainability and scalability of this digital technology. Considerations as well around data protection should be kept at the heart of the management of personal information that is hosted on those platforms. And we've heard that today repeatedly. As recruitment by its very nature crosses countries of origin and destination, and this is what we want to encourage and see more, joint collaboration between governments is crucial for the overall success of these e-platforms in achieving their objectives. So to wrap up, we very much hope that our reports acts as a useful resource for the development and strengthening of digital technologies related to promoting safe and ethical recruitment. IOM, of course, in close coordination with our sister agency ILO, look forward to continuing to be part of efforts to share knowledge and experiences around this digital technology. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jibril.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. And I would now call on Richard from ILO to close the meeting. Richard, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jibril, and I really don't want to take up anyone else's time, so I'll try and be as brief as possible. And one of the challenges, of course, in going last is that most of the things that needed to be said have already been said in this excellent discussion, and I would urge those who are interested to continue the conversation on the discussion space of the UN Network Migration Hub, and Sophia has already shared the link in the chat. Just a few reflections from my end, and certainly Mohammed's already mentioned this, that the genesis of this report has been very much in the context of the cooperation between the two agencies, ILO and IOM, in the Arab states or more broadly, MENA region. But I think what we've seen very much in this webinar is that this is truly a global issue. And I would really like to thank our speakers from all corners of the world. And that is why also I think it's been very apt to hold this event under the auspices of the Global UN Network on Migration in the run-up to the IMRF, the International Migration Review Forum, which will consider implementation, follow-up and review of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. When we were finalizing this report, the pandemic struck, and we wondered indeed how relevant it would be, because of course the report was finished before the pandemic hit, and one of the almost immediate impacts of the pandemic was, of course, a halt on recruitment and new deployment. But I think in the light of what has happened during the pandemic and this increasing trend towards e-migration governance across the whole migration cycle, whether we talk about recruitment, dispute resolution, access to justice, and indeed increasingly on the application of various health protocols relating to COVID-19, vaccination status, PCR testing, this is all being done online, of course. We think this report is actually more relevant than ever. And given that the 4 systems that have been discussed, the 4 platforms in the course of this webinar, given that they were well established before the pandemic, I think they contain important experiences, good practices, and lessons learned, which can be taken on board in their further development, as well as in the design and development of new systems taking place during the COVID pandemic and post-pandemic. And here, I really would like to echo what Mohammed was saying, because I think it is important. The systems, I think, have done a good job of including all the stakeholders in the recruitment process, but it is important in their development to also consider the voice of these stakeholders in their further design and implementation. So finally, again, I would like to draw attention to the discussion space of the Migration Hub. I would like to thank our 4 speakers for giving these important insights into the 4 different digital platforms. Thank you, Jibril. You've been an excellent moderator during the course of this session, and I understand it's still relatively early in London. Also to Amy Mudin and to Michelle and Marina for their introductions, and to all of you, dear participants, for your questions and your active participation in this webinar. So thanks to all, and you know, it just suffices me to say at the very end that I wish you a very good day and evening wherever you are, and please do stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to ILO and ILO. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your day, and happy Diwali to our Indian participants.
Indeed, and thanks, Sophia.